Okay, so we'll review Torah Beis. So before we start, let's just understand a little concept. There's a concept called Tanuk. Tanuk will define it in English.
Tanuk, like Onik Shabbat. Tanuk means
enjoy something.
Enjoying something.
So there's different levels of Tanugim, right? So there's a level of Tanugim where someone enjoys a piece of candy, of whatever. Then there's someone who enjoys something more quality, like let's call it meat. Then there's even more quality, like wine. And then
whiskey, scotch.
Yes, it's more finer. And then there is a higher level where someone enjoys a song.
Yeah.
There's a higher level where someone enjoys there's musical instruments, and then there's actually the song, and then someone enjoys even a little finer. And then there's the point where the person enjoys some smart ideas.
Intellectual
pleasure. So pleasure, it goes down level by level by level, as we started with the candy, and then it goes up to higher levels where pleasure is. So everything is pleasure, but you define it in every world. Let's call the candy world as the world of itself. Let's call the meat as a world of itself. So the wine as a. So there's levels in pleasure. So there are people who are finer. The candies don't interest them. But maybe meat, yes. There are people meat even don't interest them. But the whiskeys, the wine, they're very fine tuned to that. And then there are people that they don't enjoy that either, but they enjoy musical instruments. Some people don't enjoy musical instruments, but they enjoy a song. Some of them intellectual. So there's levels, and then there is even higher than just the intellectual. Someone who enjoys davening, it's closeness, relationship. Then there's someone who has pleasure out of learning. So there's levels of pleasure, right? But everything is pleasure, but it goes down. Let's call it like a chain. Lower, but it's everything pleasure, but as it goes down. So there's many concepts over here that we'll find that the Menachem will be explaining it in the physical world, but then it goes up to the highest world, because it's the same concept which goes from the bottom up to the highest. But as it goes higher and higher, it's much more ruchni, much more spiritual, and it's not the physical understanding, it's not the materialistic understanding. So as we start with Rayach, so the same concept that he's going to explain over here, there's Madira Tinyane. Look at Madira Tinyane.
What's Tinyane? It's supposed to be...
Right, it's the second one that he started, Torah Aleph. And look at Torah Yid Beis. You won't have it here, I'll show it to you. So as it starts, Beis Yid Beis over here he explains, you don't have it here. So he explains that Mashiach, the concept of his noitzes of Mashiach, there are sparks from Mashiach now, right? So he explains that everything, kol advarim, everything you differentiate from one to the other is with three things. Mara, tam, reach. Mara is the way it looks, the way it tastes, and the way it smells.
So there's going to be the three differences between now and Mashiach?
No, three differences between every object. The cup looks different than the bottle.
Right.
And this food smells different than the others. And tastes different. Okay. Right? So there's, and that's the Rosh Hashanah of Matar. Matar is rain. Mem tes reish. And that's why, and he says that the main thing is the reach, smelling. Why? Because the neshama, the soul of the person, only enjoys reich. Reich is a very fine-tuned thing. So the neshama has shaykhs to the Gemara says.
Interesting. Why dafka reich?
Because
you can't explain a smell, and you can't explain a taste, and you can't explain color.
Right.
So why is it dafka reich? You're saying? Because those are three things that you can't explain in and of themselves.
Right. But the difference is. But the difference is, neshama, when you see something, it's still something physical, right? It has a shape. The shape, it's spiritual in a way, but it's still something you see, right? In your eyes.
The smell isn't something you can see physically. I hear it.
That's not something you can see physically. It's something very fine tuned. Taste, it's something you eat. There's a taste bus. That's why we learned from the Baal Shem Tov that the reason why something tastes, why people crave to certain things is, we didn't learn it here in Likutey Moharan, but he's saying that the reason why people crave to certain things is because there's netzutzums that he has to be mild to elevate certain sparks. But it's still, so it's also ruchni. But he explained that all these three things that's matter, and the main thing is the neshama. So he says that the main tefillah is from the neshama. Koilan neshama to halel ka. Koilan neshama, so neshama davens. And Mashiach is the one who's mekabel all the tefillahs. So he explains, because Mashiach is choitem. Mashiach he accepts all the smellings. With the smellings are the tefillahs. Why? Because tefillah is yoinik from the neshama. That's the reach. That's the beginner tilosi echtem lach, he explains. That's what we learned before. Beginner choitem, and that's why it's called Mashiach, because so he says siach is also the growth of the grasses. That's siach, and the grasses have all kind of smells. So that's also the same concept where you see smelling goes into physical grass. So Mashiach is also from the root of siach. Siach is grass.
Right.
So that's also the begin of choitem, telosi echtem lach, Mashiach bekabel. So Mashiach is accepting it, Mashiach Hashem. So it's very short, and this is something we can elaborate on a lot, but what he's explaining here basically is to understand that the main concept of tefillah is something that has to do with the neshama. So we'll explain it as we learn it inside, but it has to do with the neshama. Who actually is praying? It's not a physical body, because the physical body is basically is like an animal, right? You need the neshama. That the neshama is all the emotions, all the feelings, and all the things that a person has, versus the body, which the body is basically focusing on materialistic things, like enjoyment, physical pleasure, jumping, dancing, whatever. Versus then there is the neshama, which the neshama is more the spiritual thing. It's looking for spirituality, connection to Hashem, and everything. All right. So when it comes to prayers, who's actually praying? Who's actually davening? It's the neshama of the person. Yet the neshama needs a body in this world to connect with in order to be able to daven. That's why the davening of us is much more chashuv than the malachim. But even the malachim, they don't have physical bodies, but they have something which the neshama is higher than a malach when it's in the right route, in the right direction. But it's still the neshama who davens, the neshama davens. Kol neshama ta'halel ka. So he's going to explain a very different concepts from this little paragraph that we just saw in Medira Tinyana Aleph, Yud Beis, Medira Tinyana Teri Aleph, Likutey Beis. But what he's explaining is, a person who davens is a neshama davens. So what happens now? This neshama, when he davens, it turns also into a reach. It's a smell. Why is it a smell? Because the neshama,
a tefillah turns into a smell.
So the neshama is smelling. Why? Because the life of a neshama, what's the main enjoyment of the neshama is smell. Smelling is a spiritual. So it's a physical, as you say, as I tried to explain. The same as pleasure has levels. So there's the physical level of smelling, where you just there's people who are just busy with perfumes, and then there's more fine-tuned. You can fine-tuned smell in higher levels. There was tzaddikim who were able to smell a meat and say it's not kosher because it doesn't smell right.
Interesting.
So what was this smell? There was a fine tuning of smelling. It was a kosher smell versus non-kosher smell. But that's a neshama connection that has the ability of smelling and getting to understand what something is all about. So he's explaining it, Mashiach, as he's going to explain here a little bit more elaborate on it. Mashiach is the one who he's accepting all the tefillahs. He's gathering all the tefillahs together from everyone and he's the one who elevates the tefillahs to Hashem. Now, there's also another concept that we have to understand. there's 5 levels of neshama. There's nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. 5 levels of neshama.
The yechida is the neshama, right? That's
right, right. So all these 5 levels of neshama is also in conjunction with the 4 oilimus, which is this is Asiyah, Yitzira, Bria, Atzilus.
Remember I told you about this? The 4 worlds?
4 worlds, and then there's the higher worlds, which goes into Keser and everything, which is already the Yechida and Chaya and Yechida from the Neshama. So there's the 4 levels of the person, and Chaya is Atzilus, and then there's the higher level, which is Yechida, which goes up to the higher levels. So the prayer, the Baal Shem Tov says, that davening, every davening of a person, their davening is also categorized in 4 levels. As you look in the Sidurim, they have Asiyah, Bria. So there's 4 levels of.
So in the Sfardish, it's in the
Sfardish Sidurim, they write it right. So there's 4 levels in davening. Who exactly is transferring the tefillah from one level to the next level, from the one olim? It's through the neshama of the person, which the neshama is actually also divided to 5 levels. So when a person, as he puts his neshama into davening, he keeps on elevating it from one level to the next level, the Baal Shem Tov says. So that's what prayers, you'll see, also has to do with neshamas. That's why he calls tefillas also areach. That's why he called it Mashiach, is the one who basically takes all the tefillas and he elevates it finally to Hashem.
So it's going to be interesting to see where his what his source is for saying.
Right. So he's starting with Nukva de Padaske.
Okay.
So Isa b'Sifra Tetznisa. So he starts off with Perek Beis. Nukva de Padaske Moshech Riech de Chayil Mshiche. So Mashiach gets his chayis from Nukva de Padaske. So as you explained it, that Padaske has to do with it's a level. Padaske is Asar, but it's a level of Arich Ampen. In the Partzufim, it's called the Choitem of Arich Ampen, which also has to do with smelling.
The nose of Arich Ampen.
Right. So we're not talking about a physical nose. It's a fine level of smell, which is not a physical smell as well. It's a certain concept.
But also gives chayas as well.
Right. So
maybe we can explain to Ben Sion exactly what the Adam Kadmon is. Is there a way to, in a simple way?
Let's try to keep to this, but otherwise we'll go with too much information. You lose.
Okay.
So we'll just try to. There's sometimes a person is very tired. You give him to smell something good, really it wakes him up. So that means the person got some chayas, some life out of the smell, right? So smell has the ability of boosting a person, boosting his energy. So there's the ruchnisdige concept. That from Nukva to Padaske, from the nose, there's ability, because what happens is when a person davens, after davening, the person gets new chayas that it didn't have before. A person gets after davening.
What chayas means? Do you know what that means?
Exempt.
Chayas, no. Chayas means life. Chayim.
Oh,
chayut.
Asa chayiv.
No. Chayus.
Oh.
Chayut.
Means to be enlivened by something.
Right, so a person...
Energized.
So after davening, the person has the ability, we'll be seeing soon, the person has the ability to be mechadish, to invent, to reach new inventions that he didn't have before davening. Because he reached a high level. When he reached that high level, you have the ability to to invent and to come into new inventions that it didn't have before. It's like
you're able
new
to
ideas.
get new ideas.
But where do you get the ideas from? Like sometimes you're stuck with something, you're trying to get the solution. You're basically you're stuck in it, and all of a sudden, like something you got, like something enlightening, how you call it, something light. Oh, I got an
It's
idea.
an aha moment.
Yeah, but ideas aren't really new. They're just like you already have the material. You just thought of it in another way, no?
Well, there's one thing. That's one thing. Another thing is to sit there and understand it. You're sitting and learning a piece of Gemara. Sometimes you're just not getting it, right? You could just not. Yeah. You could just not be understanding it, and then you get some inspiration. You get an aha moment where you start to understand it. Is that one way?
Right. So
or are you talking about Daf Chidushim?
No, yeah, it's Chidushim as well. So there's levels, as you said. There's the levels. So sometimes things are simple, but you're just stuck for some reason. But sometimes just something you have to clarify, and for some reason you're not clearing it now, and all of a sudden you get this enlightenment, you get this idea, oh, I got the answer. So basically, where do you get this concept? So in the Ruchnius, we know now that a person has a neshama a person has a koich of chachma, which a neshama, it's more ruchni. So
you know what that means, ruchni?
Alive.
Spiritual,
right? Much more spiritual. So the person has an ability to reach higher insights than it reached before. The person, when he tries to when he's engrossed in a thing, fully focused, he has the ability. All of a sudden, the person has a nefesh, which gives him this idea, which he didn't have before. There's some will call it universal intelligence, and some will say universal intelligence is called kvir. I'll not get into that.
It's called what?
Some will say universal intelligence will be called, it depends how you call it, what is universal intelligence is all about. But universal intelligence is also a concept that those who are busy with it, basically trying to understand, telling the person there is some intelligence that everyone has, you only reach it through something. Some will say, no, that comes actually from the neshama. Which that's basically what we are saying now, that the universal intelligence is something that a person has because of his spirituality. But there's universal intelligence every goy has, which a non-Jew has as well. But then there's universal intelligence which has to do with the neshama. It's something that a goy can't reach. Something that only a yid has the ability, because that's his neshama. He has a neshama versus a goy has only a ruach chaim, not a neshama. Doesn't have this level.
You understand the difference between the two?
Yeah.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah.
You can stop whenever you have a question.
I know.
Good.
Because even in halacha, for an example, I don't want to elaborate on that, but in halacha, a goy is not a kofer when he believes that there is two gods, versus a yid when he believes there's two gods is a kofer. Why is it so? You know what kfira is all about, yes?
You know what kfira is?
Oh no,
What's an apikaris? You know what an apikaris is?
That I don't know.
Okay, kfira mean. What does kfira mean? Do you know?
Exempt?
No.
Like
Kfira means not believing in the Torah.
Oh.
It means that you believe in something which is against the
certain principles of faith.
Yeah.
So against God or against Judaism?
Against Judaism. It's
Judaism.
something that it's a belief that doesn't that's not in line with the 13 principles of faith.
So a goy, if he believes in two gods, he's not a kofer. Why?
Because he already
because
did.
his source, he doesn't have a neshama. So
but if you're saying that, then how is it possible for them to keep the 7 mitzvahs of Noah?
Because the 7 mitzvahs of Noah is not including not believing. They're not allowed to idol worship, but believing in shittuf, that there is a partnership. That's not part of their 7 mitzvahs.
Now I'm confused.
They have the right to believe that there is a partnership.
So what's the difference between that and idol worship?
Idol worship are the ones who believe in worshipping idols.
They believe that this chair has power or something like that?
Right. This chair.
I have a question.
Not this chair. It's not only that. They believe it's basically it's something that connects to something, basically. So when they have this kind of shape, so they believe, let's say, if they idol worship the moon, they believe that the moon has its own power. So I don't want to get into depth. I'm trying to explain a concept that the goy, because he doesn't have a neshama, he doesn't have the ability of understanding higher than their ruach is, and therefore, because it's a lower level, and that level there's shaykh. There's a possibility for klippah. Klippah has its source over there.
You know what klippah is?
No.
Klippah is a shell. Shell. What is a shell?
Covering?
Okay, so
Covering.
exactly. So you have with an orange. What do you have to do to get to the fruit of the orange?
Peel.
You have
Take
to peel
off the
it.
peel. Yeah.
Right. So what's the peel? It's nothing. It's garbage.
Yeah.
Right. It's the outer part of it. Right. The real thing is the fruit. It's the same thing. How sometimes people they concentrate too much on the outer part, on the shell, as opposed to the real thing. So people, for example, who care too much about the physical world, right? And they don't remember that they have a neshama, and they don't remember that everything comes from Hashem. They're too much focused on the klippas. You understand what I mean? On the outer thing. This physical world, everything that we see, this is at the end. It's just a shell of the real reality, which is Hashem. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the concept over here is that therefore, because their source is in a lower level, and there is a possibility for a clipper for a shell, so they are allowed to believe there is partnership. But a Yid, a Jew, because he has a neshama is a much higher level. So his source is much higher. So his source is not from two, his source is from one. So he's not allowed to believe in two, only in one. So it's just an example to understand. There is levels for everything, and then there's levels of where things come. So he's explaining over here is like this. So we have the Nukve de Padaske, which is a concept in Kabbalah, Sifrit Tznius, a concept of Zohar, which says that the Ruach comes from Mashiach. So he's starting to explain. The weapon of Mashiach has its weapon. What's the weapon of Mashiach is Tefillah. So the main way for Mashiach, in order, let's call it, to conquer the world, but now we're not talking Mashiach at a final redemption. We're talking now in the minor redemptions. It's the small redemptions, the redemption of every person, the redemption of every generation. Like when we are locked into our materialistic world with our materialistic desires, and we don't have the ability to free ourselves from that. It's also called some kind of galus, of being an exile. On the Shomer, we're all in exile in a way. So when we suffer in this world from non-Jews, it's also exile. Everything is. Basically the idea is when you're not living with God 100%, you're still in exile. So there's a physical exile when we're not in Israel with the Hamikdash and everything, and then there is the ruchnius exile, which is now, and it's going to last the whole time till we get freed by Mashiach finally. But there is still a yitzia from Galus. Every person could get out of his Galus part, in a partially. So there's Mashiach, which is relevant in every generation. There's a Mashiach in every generation. Trying to explain a tzaddik is called Mashiach. Why is a tzaddik Mashiach? Because tzaddik is someone who had the ability to free himself from his own physical exile, from his ruchni spiritual exile, and he got to a higher level, and he's not locked into his materialistic boundaries. He was able to pass those boundaries, break those boundaries, and really reach the point where he has to go. So that's also called Mashiach. In a sense?
Is tefillin one main weapon?
Tefillin is part of the weapon.
So then why do people rap in different ways if it's one main weapon?
Because the ways is not exactly what counts. Tefillin itself counts.
Oh.
So ways has to do with something, but it's already a complicated idea.
It's a good question.
It's a very good question.
Thinking about talit and tefillin. So what would that do? Like tefillin, if you wrap its own ways, okay. So tefillin's the main thing. So what about talit and everything?
So those.
Well, he's saying tefillah.
No, but he was asking about tefillin. So I'm saying that there's customs and everything.
Yeah.
So as long as you follow your custom, it's like Kriyat Yamsuf. Kriyat Yamsuf was
You know what that means?
Splitting of the sea.
Splitting of the sea. It was split into 12. So every person they weren't able to cross the trail. There was 12 trails, and everyone had to follow his trail and his path. So in order a person should reach his path up with tefillah, he has to follow his custom. You cannot mix. If you are basically tied up into your custom, you gotta follow
the custom, like following the path.
The path, the custom is like a path. It's like a trail. So there's 12 tribes, and there's 12 customs. Let's call main customs. So there's minor ideas in the middle, but there's there's a few main highways. So all the highways, they all reach to the same point. You want to reach a certain state or whatever. So there are many ways you could take, but the idea is to get into that state. So the same is you want to reach Hashemayim by davening. So there's customs, different sidurim, and there's customs. It has to do, but still everything reaches the same point. So he's explaining that.
But on top of that, if his main weapon is tefillah, right? Which is dafka davening, right?
Right.
So your tefillin and your talis, those are your tools to be able to do the good fight. You see what I'm saying?
So then what's your siddur?
Same thing, right?
It's part. Everything is part of it. So we're saying that the main klai zayin of Mashiach is tefillah is davening. Which davening is the bechin of choitim, of the nose, smelling. So he's going to bring rayas to explain it. K'mashikosov, he brings psukim that's ithilosi, tehillah is praise. Echtoim loch. So he explains echtoim loch of the root of choitim, of a nose. Imisham ikar chayusay. The main chayus of a person comes through davening. All these wars that he will do, and all the conquering that he will do, hakal misham, everything comes from tefillah. So let's understand. So tefillah is the main point, which the main weapon. So Mashiach will be mariach, will be smelling. Which smelling we understand now it has to do with davening. That's the main klai zayin of the person, and as he's going to explain soon, it has to do with neshama also, as well. Because the neshama is also living from smell. So everything is connected, like interconnected. So we gotta understand that when we learn Likutey Moharan, he brings many concepts that has some kind of connection. So it doesn't have to do 100%, doesn't have to be 100% equal, but still it uses part of this and part of that and part of that. So Bechina, he's going to explain choitim could have a few definitions. So what he explains over here, choitim, will be the part of the smell that has to do with the neshama, has to do with davening, which davening is considered a smell because it has to do with the neshama. So everything combines into it's like a picture when you want to paint a picture. So you can use all kind of colors and all kinds of lines, all kind of crooked lines or whatever. Then it combines it to a full picture. That's basically he's explaining here.
So a bechina, right? One very simple example. You have a circle, right? So what's the bechina of a circle? An apple. What's another bechina of a circle?
Orange.
An orange. What about another one? A basketball, right?
Egg.
An egg, right? Then you can say, oh, okay, so if an egg is a bechina of a circle, that means that an omelet is also a bechina of a circle because the omelets come from eggs, right? So there's all these things, but none of them are exactly a circle, right? But they're all somehow connected to it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, like oranges and eggs are circles, but like you can't make omelets from oranges.
You can't make omelets from oranges, but you just explained how now because an egg is a circle, and an orange is a circle, they're both connected in a way. There's some kind of a connection. It's not 100% equal. They're not equal, but there's a connection between the two of them.
Like the physical way is the same, but the color and the shape and everything isn't the same.
Right. So basically the idea over here, what he's trying to explain is, he's trying to bring all kind of points that are interconnected, but over here, everything paints the picture of Mashiach, what has to do with davening. So the whole Torah is going to explain davening. So the story what you were repeating before, that why this Torah has to do with this dream that this Talmud had, is also the message that he was getting is about tefillah, and this whole Torah is focusing towards tefillah. But in order to understand the significance of tefillah, what tefillah does, and why by tefillah you need a tzaddik, why you have to connect yourself to a tzaddik, that's why he elaborates on all these points. So he explains. So far we have over here, Mashiach is part of smell. That's choitem is the ikar klai zayin, the main klai zayin. So he explains the pasuk says in Parashat Bereshus, becharbi ivekashti, which cherv is a sword, but a sword is through bekashti. Kashti is an arrow. It's an arrow, but it's also bakosha. Rashi explains, Perish Rashi, tefillah ibakosha. So another way to explain a sword is through prayers, because that's another way of weaponing. So there's two ways. Like there's the kid in class that he's physically strong and he beats everyone physically up, and then there's the kid who is maybe the weakest kid in part of muscles, but he has a mouth. Oh, gotcha a bit. He kills everyone with his mouth. He teases everyone. So it's also, that's his weapon. So there's two kind of weapons. So there's a physical weapon, a sword, and then there's a sword which we can talk our prayers. That's also called a cheref, a sword, but it's a different kind of sword. It's not a physical; it's more a spiritual. So I won't ask with bekashti. So bekashti, I won't. No, eftach means I won't rely on my keshes. Keshes is the arrow, but over here he explains, "Belekim hilalni al dam to Hashem bechinas tilosi echtem lach." That's also the begin of Tehillah, which is the begin of echtem. Now he explains.
Echtem is the nose. So
the nose.
So basically, Rav Nachman is showing that the nose and tefillah, davening, are connected.
So we're not talking about the physical nose. We're not talking about the physical smell, a spiritual smell, but it has to do with davening. So he explains that the weapon of Mashiach. That's what Mashiach is called moirech v'doin. He's going to explain it because Mashiach's power is tefillah, davening. That's his main power. The main power is the tefillah, which this is the strongest part of the person, the strongest weapon. So he says, in order to be able to be zoicha to this weapon, only through Yosef. What's the begin of Yosef? And Shmiras Habris. Yosef's specialty was Shmiras Habris. Why? Because he had Potiphar. Potiphar had his wife, wanted to marry Yosef, and asked Yosef to commit adultery, right? And Yosef refused. Now that's called Shmiras Habris. So in order to be zoiche, to reach this high level of tefillah, your tefillah should be able to penetrate and break through all the walls that it needs, is only through Shmiras Habris. That's a special power that a person has. When he's holy, he can reach that level. So you see also
everything?
So is it like there's one way of declining food and then there's another way of declining bigger sins? Like that? Because you said he was able to and when you get to higher tefillah, then you can decline against doing adultery. So is there like two levels of...
No, what he said was like this. So in order to have your davening be on a high level, right, you need to make sure to be able to have Shmiras Habris. So Shmiras Habris is making sure that you behave yourself in the proper way, like Yosef did. Potiphar's wife tried to get Yosef to do something bad, and he declined her, right? So by doing this, he was doing Shmiras Habris. And through this, by behaving himself in the proper way and not doing improper things, he was able to get his davening to a high level. So that's what Reb Nachman is explaining to us. That if you want to be able to daven on a high level, you need to make sure that you behave yourself properly.
Oh.
In that regard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was saying like this. So this klazayin you have to get through Yosef, this weapon, which is through Shmiras Habris. So it brings a pasuk, which goes Chagoir Charbechol Yorach Iboy. So Chagoir Charbechol is like we're saying dressing your sword. Al Yorech. Yorech is the part of the person where it has to do with Kedushas Habris. So he's explaining that Cherev is tefillah, right? He explained that the sword is tefillah, davening. So the sword is through Yorech. Yorech is Shmiras Habris. Moshe also brings another pasuk. Through your fruit of your stomach, meaning referring to having a child, you'll be zoichet to lakisalach to bechinas Mashiach. So it has to do with the bris, again Shmiras Habris, which through that you're zoichet to bechinas Mashiach, bechinas tefillah, which you say the pasuk says Yishmeri benecha berisi, which benecha berisi is again bris, which has also to do with Shmiras Habris. Heine, this is true, but the bechinas Yosef through Yosef.
Remember I taught this to you before one time when we learned. I explained to you that there's this idea of Yesod, right?
Oh yeah.
Tzaddik Yesod Olam, right?
Yeah.
Yesod is making sure to behave yourself properly in that way.
Yeah.
And Yosef was the main example of that. Remember I explained this to you?
Did he develop that example, or was it done before?
I mean, it was done before. I'm sure the Avos behaved themselves that way properly, but I guess Yosef, he's the one who personifies this. He's the one who personifies. Yosef is the bechina of a tzaddik. I don't know exactly why, but this is what it is.
But there's always tzaddikim, certain tzaddikim, which we could say that their main point was this point. So yes, everyone has everything, but there's something. It's like let's call it his specialty. Like you go to a doctor, he's a specialist. What's his specialty? They're all MDs, but he has a specialty in this area. So this tzaddik Yosef, his specialty was bechinas bris. He was brought into Hashem brought him into this challenge, and he was able to go through this challenge and continue.
You understand? So you have here. I'll give you an example. Another example. Every Rebbe has his special chag, right?
Right.
Every Hasidic Rebbe, he keeps all the mitzvahs, right? But every single Rebbe has a special holiday that is his. You could say his favorite. Is his specialty. You understand? So, for example, Reb Nachman, his best holiday was Rosh Hashanah. That was his holiday, right? Whereas, I guess you could say the Lubavitcher Rebbe, his holiday was Simchas Torah. That was the biggest thing by him. Maybe, right? But there's this whole idea that with every single Rebbe, he has his special holiday. So the same thing with every single tzaddik, you have his specific mitzvah that he is a specialist in. You understand? Mm-hmm. So with Yosef, his specialty was to behave himself properly in Shmiras Abris.
So Yosef Shomas Abris, so he was Zeichen Notlas Abchoyre, he got Bechoyre, she bechinas Avodas HaTfilah, which Bechoyre is also Tfilah. Why is it Tfilah? So he explains what the concept of Bechoyre. When someone is the oldest child, he gets double portion of the heritage, right, from the Yerusha. Bechinas Pishnayim, Ki HaTfilah Pishnayim. Tfilah also has in it through two points. Shnayim, what is it? Sheyesh ben Shavach Hashem, you praise Hashem. And the second thing is Sha'ala Tzarachav, you request from Hashem whatever you need. So there is the praise and there is the Bekashas Tzarachav, really what you ask from. The sword with two, it's sharpened on both sides. Bechinas Beis Piyas has two mouths. Bechinas Pishnayim, the double portion. When it was taken away from Reuven. Why? That Shechilul Yitziyah Oviv. Reuven committed as some sort of a sin that has a connection with the opposite of Shmiras Abris. Kitala b'Shmiras Abris.
So do you know what Reuven did?
He declined something that we all can decline. Something like that.
No. So Reuven, what happened after
Rachel passed away?
After Rachel passed away. Who's Reuven's dad?
Oh,
Yaakov. Yeah. So who did Yaakov sleep with after Rachel passed away? Rachel was his wife, his main wife, right?
Oh yeah, Rachel, and then there was explanation why there wasn't like two moons and who the moon was, something like that.
So let's stick with the question. So
I'm trying to remember.
Yaakov so we were having Bila and Zilpah. So Bila was the shifcha of Rachel, and Yaakov, after Rachel passed away, he moved his bed into the tent of Bila. So what happened? Reuven got upset, saying
because Leah was his mother,
and Leah was older than Rachel, the older sister.
Yeah.
And so she was the second. So after Rachel passed away, he should have moved his bed into Leah's tent. So he moved the bed out of Bila's tent into his mother's tent, and that was considered as a sin, something connected to adultery, although it had no real connection. But in the fine tuning, in the fine point, it has something to do with that. That's something. It's a different concept that we won't elaborate on it. But there's something. Sometimes certain things has a certain connection to something, and it's called this way, although it's not exactly this.
Right.
So he says. So we have over here Alka Yosef. לא מסביב.
זה
בבניין הבא.
בבניין הבא, נכון.
Al kind of for Yosef בשביל שזוכה לבחינס תפילה, because of זוכה את התפילה שבחינס תלוסי אכתוין. So we're saying over there the small, right? In the parentheses. got a Yosef בשביל שזוכה לבחינס תפילה. Yosef because he was זוכה את התפילה שבחינס תלוסי אכתם לך, שבחינס חייס ענים שממנוק ואת הפדסקה. Al kind נקרא בן פיירס יוסף. Bechinas Tov Reish Peiv. Poiris is a combination of Tov Reish Peiv of Oiris. Shazay and Shem is the seven holy Shemas of Ein Beis, Samach Gimel Mem Hey, Beis Nun, Kuf Sam Chalef, Kuf Ninat, Kuf Mem Gimel. Showing all together are Tov Reish Pei Vov. Shemekabel Manukva de Padaske. Why? Ki Padaske as well. Bigimati Tov Reish Pei Vov. So you see, Padaske has.
It's actually there's a difference of one between the two of them, but they add the extra one.
The extra word. So you see, Padaske Tov Reish Pei Vov. The Shemes are Tov Reish Pei Vov. The Shemes come out of this oilam, which is the ban, ma ban, and all this, right? And Beis, and which this is ben Poiris Yosef. So Yosef was zoiche to that. So as we are now at this point, so we understand.
So he was zoiche to the highest level of tefillah.
Right.
Okay.
So we're saying in order to be zoiche to the highest level of tefillah, you need shmiras abris, and through shmiras abris, you reach a level of Mashiach, tefillah, moiriv gedoim, bekashti, all these things. Now, Gimel, Mishi zoche lecherev hazeh, the one who is zoiche to this sword.
Do you know what it means to be zoiche? What does that word mean?
No, I keep thinking of exam.
Zoiche means to be worthy, to be worthy of. Spoil?
Yeah, I was
so to
thinking
be zoiche of this prin of tefillah, that means to be zoiche of this idea of tefillah. Okay?
Right. But we gotta understand when you use the word you're worthy, so basically you are saying that's something you are getting. Basically saying there's if you walk on this path, you start from point A, you want to reach to point Z. So if you go straight on the path, you'll reach from point A to point Z, going through all these points, right? Zoiche, if you are worthy, you won't use the word zoiche for someone who starts at a path and walks from point A to point Z, because that's a physical thing. You basically walk the way through and you reach it. But if you need some kind of help in order to reach it, so then you say, oh, this person was worthy to get the help in order to reach that point.
So it's basically with no merit. Well,
it's not.
It's with merit but no effort.
It's effort, and through effort you get the merit to reach it.
Interesting. Okay. So zoiche. Okay.
So zoiche is something you try. You have to work in order to daven. You have to have kavanah. You have to have shmiras abris. That's your effort. But after you do the effort, then you're having the merit to reach it. So it's not only, you can't just say, okay, the person walks, so he reaches the point automatically. It's like nature, you start, if you walk on a path, then you reach the end.
Of course you get there, right?
You get there. It doesn't work this way. You need a little merit, but the merit you get because of shmiras abris. If you're holy for that, then you have the ability to because you get a little siyur. That's the word of zoiche. So he says, so the one who is zoiche, this tzaddik, that zoiche to this word, tzurich lady has to know eichlil choim im acheref.
So if you get the sword, you have to know how to fight with it.
How to fight with it.
The sword of tefillah, right?
You shouldn't bend it to the right or to the left. Vishikalaya lasara should be exactly aimed to the point. It should be a sharpshooter. She shouldn't miss the point. Now, in order to understand this concept, he doesn't explain what exactly is the problem here. So we can say, listen, okay, when we will reach this point, we'll worry then to understand what he means. You can say that.
That's right.
But basically what he's saying is, you have to know how to daven afterwards. You can say it in a way, don't ask for the not right things. When you have the koich of tefillah, you can daven, and as the Tzei Rav Yasser, we say Hashem does and fulfills the wishes of. But there's certain things that you shouldn't be obviously davening for, or you have to watch how you daven, have the right. He doesn't explain exactly what the problem is, but he's saying that you need to know how to exactly. It's like when you learn how to, when you're getting trained to fight. You have to learn how to all the tactics, exactly how to fight. So after when the person is zoiche to the begin of tefillah, to begin to daven the right way, the proper way, he still has to know not to miss the point. He has to know to daven exactly to the point, not to miss it. Obviously, what exactly, I don't know. Don't daven in the not right way, not right manner. I don't know exactly what it is. But there's something. There's a story. There's one of the greatest tzaddikim called Rameir of Premishlan. He was a famous, very wonder rabbi. Even non-Chassidim were like amazed. They were amazed from his kedusha. Meir of Premishlam.
I think actually the guy who was my Mesader Kiddushin, he comes from a... Yeah, I mean, he's not Hasidish at all, right? But his family... Yeah.
So the Meir of Premishlam, there was a story, the Meir of Premishlam was asking Mendel Merimenef. Mendel Merimenef was a tzaddik, was one of the Talmidim of... one of the Talmidim, I think, for Melech of Lezensk. And so there was once a group of Hasidim traveling to the Mendel of Rimenef, passed by the city of the Premishlam. So the Meidel asked, for where did the Rebbe take the courage, and why is he daring? He dares to go through this and this path. I don't know exactly. He said he was claiming like this path is very dangerous, and you can miss it. So the oldest of this group answered, repeated the whole Torah from Mendel Fremenef. And I'll say, if he's already at this level, then he's allowed to take this path. That's what Emor said. So there's something called, you have to know which path to use exactly, to know in order which way to go. You shouldn't miss the point. You davening should reach the point where it is. So he's not explaining it over here. But he explains in order, only through mishpat, judgment. That's the middle pole. He's aiming towards with his weapon to the right place, not to the right side, not to the left side. All his words is being said b'mishpat, with judgment. Let's just stop for a second. Mishpat, judgment, right? When you go to a judge, when there's a dispute between two people, you go to a judge. So what's the point of the judge? The judge is the one who he is judging who is right? So that's a dispute between two people. What happens when there's the government suing the people of New York City? People of New York are, right? They are suing someone. So basically you go to the judge, and then there's the person who's asking for mercy. So what's the concept of mercy? Rachamim, right? Rachamim, mercy. Let's say if you come to a person asking, please have mercy on me. The person, why do you want me to have mercy on you? That's not right. That's not fair. Why do I have mercy? Why should I have mercy? But everyone understands, yes, there is a concept of mercy. And mercy is something that's even nice. It's beautiful. That's called tiferes. Why is it so? Why is it so?
Because you don't have to do it, but you do it.
But if a person doesn't have mercy, you'll say this person's an animal. Why would you say so?
I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know. I don't know why I would call somebody who doesn't have mercy an animal.
Why is it so? There's right and wrong, and this person sticks to the right. He says, listen, that's the rule. He's a bad judge. He never ever forgives anyone. Why is it so? Why do people say so? Because there's chesed and there's gevura, and then there's tiferes. Tiferes in the middle. So there's the chesed.
Tiferes is beauty.
Beauty is when it's a blend. When colors blend together, that's a beauty. That's a beautiful portrait, right? You have this black or white portrait. It's missing. The whole life is missing. It has these colors in it. Then it's beautiful. Then it's nice. You look at the Sforim, as a beauty, have all kind of colors. That's beautiful. Everything is the same color. It's dull, right? It's missing something out of it. It's life missing. So there's beauty. Beauty is in Rachman, mercy. Why? Because a person needs to have both sides into himself. On one hand, he needs to stick to what's right or wrong, but on the other hand, he has to have nice midas, has to be a nice person, has to be able to forgive someone, he has to be able to have mercy on people. That's the middle pole. So there's the right and there's the left, and then there's the middle. That's mercy. That's mishpat.
It's funny, actually. I was just thinking about it. There's a famous book series. It's called The Game of Thrones. So in it, there's this one character where he no matter what, he's always going to go and do pure judgment. There's a story about him where basically somebody came and saved his life, but this person who saved his life, he was a smuggler. He would go and bring things illegally, right? So he thanked him for saving his life, but then he still cut off 3 fingers of his to, for the smuggling. And then now I'm remembering that everybody hated him for this reason, even though he was always right. He was always to the rule. And it's interesting, I don't know why.
And
why
there was a sheriff in Muncie, a sheriff, deputy sheriff, right, who stopped his own wife. Happened to be, she was speeding. You deserve a ticket. What do you mean? You're speeding, you deserve a ticket. That's his own wife. But you're speeding, that's the law. You became. So we all understand something is funny. Like we all have a smirk when we hear the story. Why? Because there's a concept of mercy, which is also it's not a lie. You're not being unfair when you have mercy.
It's really amazing. You would think that you should really go and respect the person who follows the law, because following the law is very difficult on its own, right?
But rigidness, inflexibility is also wrong.
This is hilarious because my boss is exactly like this. Besides that, but I'm just telling you, there's somebody I work with, and he's exactly like this. He's very, very rigid, and it's very difficult to work with him, and it's interesting.
And the beauty when people connect to someone is flexible. One of the best nature that a person could buy to himself is to be flexible.
So you're saying the mishpat. So what Reb Nachman's saying here is that
mishpat over here is in order to have the right judgment, in order to know exactly how to do. He's going to explain soon. Is through tzedakah. Why is it through tzedakah? Because when you give for someone, like there's the poor person. So the Gemara says, the Matanusa was asking, why should I give for this person charity? If Hashem created him as a poor person, and Hashem gave me the luck to be a rich person, so why should I give from my wealth, from my work that I worked? I risked my life on sometimes, have these roofers climbing on the roof in order to get some money. So why you want me to give my hard-earned money to this person because he's poor? But we all say, no, you need mercy. He's a poor guy. But so, Hashem created him this way. Obviously, there's a reason for. So here's the rigid person. He sticks to the judgment. He says, what do you mean? He was created this way. That's. But Hashem said, no. If you have mercy on this person, I'll have mercy on you. So we all understand there's a concept of mercy, of judgment, of mishpat, which mishpat over here refers to rachmim, which is mercy, and this helps the tzaddik to choose the right path. It shouldn't.
So you're telling me that the real so let's connect everything up until now, right? Mashiach, his main klei zayin, his main weapon is tefillah, right? Tefillah, the way to get to the highest level of tefillah is through shmiras habris.
But even after that,
if you get the b'china, if you're zoichet to this high level of tefillah,
you still have to know to direct it right.
You have to know how to direct it right.
In order to direct it right, you need
mishpat.
You need mishpat.
And to get to the higher and to get the correct level of mishpat, you need tzedakah.
That's what he's going to say soon in Ois Dalet. So beforehand, he brings the rayas that you need mishpat. So he explains. That's why Yosef got the bechorah from Yaakov. Why is it from Yaakov? Yaakov gave for Yosef Shem. Ani daike. What is Ani? Ani is bechina of mishpat.
Yaakov is bechina of mishpat?
Yes, he doesn't explain why, but he says she bechina is mishpat.
Well, Yaakov is tiferes. You're telling me that
correct? Tiferes. Oh, that's why. Because right. Because Yaakov is tiferes. Tiferes is mishpat, which is in the middle. Everything.
So mishpat is not gvura.
Mishpat is in the middle.
What he refers is between chesed and gvura. That's true. That's true justice.
But that's when you need true justice. That's why mercy is called true. It's not called unfair. Everyone understands having mercy is a nice thing, and that's the right judge you want to go through. Why? Not because you'll be saved, because he is the right person to go through. But if he's going to have mercy on the one who doesn't deserve it, and everyone will get mercy, well, what's going to be the end? Then there will be no law and orders. So you have to know, you have to judge it right. It has to be a right judgment. Right? When you go to the principal in yeshiva, the same story. You want the principal shouldn't be really rigid, but you also want the principal should be law and order, because otherwise all the kids
will go crazy.
They will go crazy, be beating up each other. So he says, "Ani daik shebechinas mishpat v'zekir chak misrol hi," which chak is bechinas bris. That brings to bris, which kosev a chak bis Sham, which is written by bris. What this brings to mishpat alekei Yaakov. What is that? He explains, "Hey, shetzorich Yosef lekabel zois acherev. Yosef needs to get this cherev." With this cherev we spoke about tefillah bechinas mishpat from mishpat. Why? Kedei shechalkel devarav b'mishpat. In order to be able to have his words through mishpat. So mishpatecha lemelech. Melech is melech HaMashiach. Mashiach is a melech. Right. He gets from mishpat. In order through mishpat, he reaches it. How is it? Well, now he continues in Dalit. Valdai ma zoiche. Through what is he zoiche to lebchinas mishpat? Right over here. So through what is he zoiche lebchinas mishpat? Like tzedakah through charity. Shadai tzedakah oich ze b'midas hamishpat. To tzedakah, you're not only he's saying through tzedakah you actually are holding mishpat because that's rachmim, right? Tzidkas Hashem also in mishpatav. Through tzedakah you reach mishpat. Mishpat tzedakah b'Yaakov. Mishpat tzedakah b'Yaakov. Tzedakah yaldai mishpat. Tzedakah is also through mishpat. Why? Hashem is the judge. They yashpil v'zeh yorem. He lowers one. Shemoirish lezeh. In mashil lezeh, one becomes poor and one gets rich. Right. K'shenois in tzedakah b'chinas zeh yashpil. When he goes to tzedakah, then he bechinas mashpil. Why? Shemechasem imoinei. He's losing money, right? Aber bechinas v'zeh yorem. At the same time, he's also lifting someone. Shemashil ani gives money for the ani. So through tzedakah, it's mishpat. Why is it mishpat? Because he lowers one hand. A judge. What does a judge do? He says you are wrong. You give your money to this person, right? So he's basically saying you are wrong. You are right. But it's also like he misses money and he gains money. So the poor person gains money and the rich person loses some money, but he's not actually losing as we continue. He's adrab. He gets the beginning of mishpat, which just makes it tefillah. That's why before davening,
you have to give tzedakah.
You
understand that?
Then in my shul in the morning, they always do tzedakah like mid davening or
right. Towards the end, it's the wrong time already. Well, what you could do is...
No, usually they give it, what's it called, towards the end of Psukei de Zimra.
Right. Some do it right. But what the person could do is you could prepare the money beforehand, and then when he actually goes around collecting, that's when you give it. But you prepare beforehand. Have already the money prepared, and he betzadik echzeh panecha.
So let's so that you understand next time when they go around and ask for tzedakah when you're davening in school. Make sure you understand this. So tomorrow when you go to school and you're davening, you're going to remember this. Okay? So what did we just explain? So there's a pasuk here which says, right? Where does it go? Elokim shofet zeh yashpil v'zeh yarim. Right? Hashem is the shofet. Hashem is the judge. This person he makes poor. This person he makes rich. Right? So we said that tzedakah is mishpat, right? Am I explaining this correctly?
Mm-hmm.
So tzedakah is mishpat, right? We said that so if you are zoiche, if you are worthy enough to get the sword of tefillah, the power of tefillah, right? But you need to know how to use the sword properly, right? The only way to know how to use the sword properly is mishpat, right? Judgment, right? How do you get judgment? Through tzedakah, right? Now it says in a pasuk, it says, Hashem is the judge. This person he makes poor. This person he makes rich. Now, what happens when somebody gives tzedakah? What does he do?
Right? It lifts the neshama higher.
1 second. Think about it physically. What do? You're taking your money and you're giving it to somebody else. You're making yourself poor and you're making somebody else richer. Yeah. Right? You're taking some from yourself and you're giving to, and he says that this is mishpat. This is judgment. Right? So when you're giving tzedakah, you're going and getting yourself to a higher level of tefillah. Do you understand that?
So if you get yourself to a higher spot and the other person also gets to the higher spot, no? Because they...
Well, it's a win-win situation in that regard, right?
Right. Why? The person should be able to be mechalkel shekalai lasarav leyechta shunim is the point. Why did Yaakov give the bechayre to Yosef? Because Yosef was feeding Yaakov, which is a tzedakah. It's a mashal for a person who raised a yasam, an orphan, into his house. Yosef was feeding his father and his brothers bread in order of how many members they had, children.
Mm-hmm.
So he explains, Ataf, Kamoy, Ataf el Durim, which Durim is also a notion of dibur, of talking, of Fiataf. Fiataf means Durim is tefillah, Ataf el Durim. So Ataf is prayers, he says, Fiataf. So Yosef was feeding his father and his brothers lechem lefiatav. That's why he was reaching P. P is davening. Yaakov was the beginning of Mishpat, who is the beginning of Teferes. He reached Bechoyre, which is Tefillah, as he's like he started, that Tefillah has two sides to itself. Has a double portion. Has the praise to Hashem and a quest for help. Which is Yaakov, which is the beginning of Mishpat.